Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling a Business. We had a very engaging conversation with Ellen Palmer regarding emotional preparedness for selling your company. We thought it was so important that we broke it up into 2 episodes, and we're continuing our dialogue with her. So I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes on with this. I mean, as I'm thinking through as you're speaking, the owner or the group or the family, they're selling the company. They had very little people involved in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not even their family members.
Yep, it happens.
Or they made the attempt to sell the business to their or transfer the business to the next generation, and they got the big no, and they're like, "What?" Right? I mean, so now they're saying, "Okay, what am I going to do? Oh, I guess I'm going to sell it," but they don't tell anybody. So, and then you go through all the emotional and everything we're talking about, and then all of a sudden they have to notify that next generation, or more importantly, that other key employee, and they get pushback. So so now they're not only stressed about the deal, and by the way, this all has to stay behind a curtain.
Fair.
If this filters out into the buyer's universe, it's unlikely this thing's going to move forward on the same terms that you signed off on, because you bring in that doubt factor, that skepticism factor. What's going to happen? Who am I going to rely on? They may just drop the deal, move on, or they may just they may restructure it, right? So how do you help the owner when when a couple of family members are revolting or pushing back?
You get them in a room. I mean, really, we have to spend more time communicating, and we have to understand everyone's why. So if that family member originally said, "No, this isn't what I want to do," and then things are in motion, and then there's pushback from employees or family members, you get them all together and you have a candid conversation. The stress and worry about what could happen if it gets out is more detrimental than just having a conversation and getting really, really clear and getting sure. We avoid clarity sometimes because maybe we don't want to hear what's there. It might be inconvenient for a sale. It might be inconvenient for the particular buyer that has expressed interest. We have to get clear. If you don't get clear, it's going to get clear very quickly that something is askew below the surface. There's a fault line, and we have to address it.
Because, I learned a long time ago that, you got to bring everybody that's, into that table, because people have to sign documents, that people have to sign the documents. They all got to be in that room. And I remember years ago, I was working on a transaction, and it was more on a financing deal. This is way back when I first started at Osage, and everything was done ready to go. The person never told their spouse that they had also signed. And so they pushed the papers in front of them and said, "Okay, we're ready to go." She said, "What? What is this about? I'm not doing this. I need to get my own lawyer. So all of a sudden, the whole thing just unwound. And I learned that was a nice lesson for me. Is like, never again. You need to have those people. So
the stakeholders have to be there.
Right.
You have to have those conversations, especially, let's just say there's transfer of power, right? So you've got your executive team, they're moving on, they're going to be retained by the buyer. What's happening for them? Do they feel disenfranchised? What is going on in their mindset? Because the sale is the sale, but the tail of the sale is important too. You want there to be good character that's sustained. You want reputation. You want legacy to be intact. And so if you're not having conversations with all of the major stakeholders, family, executive team, that could fracture very quickly. And it's unstable ground for everybody. And that's when there's legal issues.
Yeah, we've had, not every deal closes. It's just there's too many variables. And one of the key variables is the ownership group and or families and or key employees are not on the same page. So how do you, when you get brought into a situation with an owner that maybe, they're 5 years away from selling, or maybe 10 years away from it more, or maybe they're thinking about it. How do you address, how do you work with that team or the owner, and then, because you need to bring some other people in. How do you approach that?
You most definitely do. If I look back at what works the best, sort of the best practices of all this, the minute the decision is, or the inkling is, I think we're 3 to 5 years out, or maybe it's 1 to 3, whenever you have that perspective that that's a viable solution or that's a viable next transition, you get everyone together and you understand. Let me back up. Before you go into that meeting, I work with people to understand what's going on below that surface. Like, what are people clear about? What is their role? What value have they brought to the table? What are they going into a meeting like that feeling and thinking, right? Because it's just one person's perspective. But if it's one person's perspective and it's very different than the founder's perspective, there's going to be friction. Friction is good. It can move you forward, but it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we back up and understand, okay, what's everyone thinking? What's everyone perceiving? Then I'm simplifying this, then you come into a meeting where it's real and it's raw and it's, what does this mean for everybody? Not just me, the founder, not just you, COO or CMO or CTO, like, what does it mean? And you would be so surprised at the level of vulnerability. And I don't mean the kind that people are probably thinking, when given the opportunity to speak on this, they do. They feel valued. They feel like they're a collaborator in the process, and it changes the entire trajectory of the deal because they were involved in it.
Right.
Partners, spouses, children. When you are collaborating, you can have your perception, but when you're in conversation and dialogue, you soften, or maybe you stand a little more upright. Like, wow, I am pretty convicted on that because now I hear myself saying the things that have been rattling through my brain. And so it just takes this kind of this, not ominous, because it can be very joyful too, the decision to sell, but it takes the heaviness out of the room and people feel like they're heard and seen and valued. And when you have that is, it's never a straight line, but it's more of a straight line with fewer detours than what happens getting pulled hither and yon because you haven't taken care of the foundation. And the foundation is your people, always. You can have the strongest systems in place, but if your people don't feel seen, heard, and valued, good luck.
That's the second question buyers will ask. How's your management team?
Yeah.
Are they on board? Or when are you going to tell them? I mean, the first is about obviously the financial, but the growth, where's this business sit and what the growth opportunity is?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, okay, you'll be exiting, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years after closing. Do you have people in place to take over, and how, and what kind of culture have you created in your business, right? And if you're, work your business very non-communicative, I'll use, and it's like, do what I tell you to do, let's get it done, let's move forward, and that's a style, right? It's out there.
It's a style.
But and all of a sudden, here you are, and it's like, now you have to bring people in that you've never really collaborated with because they just did their jobs based on what you told them to do. It opens up a whole, frankly, can of worms that has to be addressed. And the sooner you can do that with your key people, right? We have a client. So it's very interesting. We have a client in market right now that he called me up the other day, and he says, we've worked as a tight knit group for forever, and there's like myself and my partner, which is a sibling, and their key employee, which knows what's going on. But I got this pit in my stomach because I've never held back from this group, but I'm concerned because of what we're doing. And now, again, I said to him, I think you have to have that conversation with him because you're going to go in the office every day being totally stressed out that you're holding something back from that. I think it's important for you to have that conversation. And secondly, he's not a young person. They're all sitting around. People are smart. And they're all saying, what's going to happen to my business? So I said, have that conversation with them because you know what? You've always had that, the collective, communal communication, the rapport. And it's just going to add additional stress that you don't need in your life right now. And he had the conversation last week and it went fine.
It almost always does. The build of the stress is way worse than the actual conversation, right? Because it's here. And what's happening here, the brain is always trying to solve for the variable in the equation that it doesn't have. So it makes up information. It makes up a story about what it's going to be like because the nervous system needs to feel calm. And it feels calm when we have information, when we know direction. And so the stuff that gets made up, the story is always so much worse typically, not always, than the actual conversation. And so the sell process, we've alluded to this a couple times, will strip you down bare and expose all of who you are and all of the things you've tucked into the quiet corners of your mind that you've been managing for years and years and years and years. That comes to the forefront because people are starting to look at the business with a very discerning eye. And those things aren't bad, but you can't get away with them now. And you're not supposed to. This is a time to transition all of it to the next person. And so you're not in it alone. You have an advisor. Maybe you have a holistic executive advisor alongside of you that you can bear it all to and make sense of it and bring it to the group. So there doesn't have to be fear. Going into conversations with fear is a train wreck because then you're trying to say the right things, you're on eggshells, and people sense that energy. And your executive team, your family is absorbing what you're shoving down and not addressing directly. They are absorbing that. And so you look at the collateral damage in families and in relationships that have been sound for years, that can be avoided.
Yeah, just not a family member, but when you have key people in your organization that the buyers are going to require to sign a document,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's like you can't just expect them to sign a document. So you have to say to them, you have to bring them into the loop, and you say you need to retain your own lawyer because you can't use our lawyer because it's a conflict of interest. But so, and you have someone who's never retained their lawyer except for buying their house, right? And this is right in front of them. That can drag things on for so long because now they got to reset and think, what's going on here? I need to get a lawyer. And of course, depending on lawyer they choose, whether they're, being conciliatory, let's get the deal done. This guy's done well for me. He's made an amazing life for me and my family. Or a kind of lawyer that's going to go for the jugular because now I think I'm in a good position that I can demand certain things, right? Those kind of, and owners don't prepare for that.
Well, what you're alluding to, and this matters for you and this matters for me in those deals as well, is there has to be a pause before you ever move forward on a deal where you're having all of those types of conversations. You can create a checklist if you need to, but really it's like, okay, yes, you're interested in selling. Who are the stakeholders? Going back to perceived value, perspective, style of communication, what type of leader have you been? No judgment, but what has the infrastructure of your leadership been to this point? Let's preserve the greatest of that and let me do what I do best, which is help us all create the conditions for discerned, aligned decision-making, right? We have to create the conditions for the discernment of those decisions and good decisions. If we're not spending time upfront educating and getting things out of people's brains and discussing them, then you're right. Then we're leaving it to all the external forces to pull this in any of the directions that it's going to go.
Yeah, we have this kind of like inertia building. You got the owner who's trying to do something, and he or she could be, at the age it's time to make them. And then you have, certain employees who are just, they're doing their jobs, but when a buyer comes in, well, this is a key salesperson or this is a key so-and-so. So we're going to want them to sign possibly an employment agreement, non-compete agreement, non-solicitation agreement. And they're not an equity stakeholder, but they have 20, 30 years of experience. They're a stakeholder in the culture of the business, of the fabric of the company. And you have this document come up and then they have reservations. So they're going to, and then the owner gets upset with them.
Of course there's reservations.
And so you have this whole dynamic with the deal itself. And now all of a sudden you have another dynamic. But now the owner says, what do you mean? I'm treating you well. Just sign a document. Right. And so that additional stress is
most definitely. It's because there's a lot of pressure.
Right.
Tons and tons and tons of pressure. And what happens when there's sustained pressure, perspective narrows. And what happens typically, people want to speed up. Founders want to speed up. I'm stressed. The perspective is get this done at all cost. And then something just happens in the nervous system, in the psyche, get it done. And so there's more hypervigilance, there's more control, there's more shoving down.
Mm-hmm.
And those stakeholders who have always been there doing all the great work are going, what is going on? That's actually how I got involved in my first deal, was working with someone on the executive team. Delightful career until the sale. And then it was
So it was
a lot of things I won't share,
Yeah.
but it was, I don't understand what's happened to this person.
Right.
And I want to be able to manage this in a way that I stay in my integrity, because this is not right. So we have to look at organizations. Organizations are people. So yes, there are documents and there's processes and there's systems. But if you're the type of leader who's always led from the business aspect and the operational aspect and the widget aspect, and you haven't focused on your people, it's going to come up now. There's no way it can't, because it's the biggest variable in the room that's no one is addressing. You can't, it's preposterous. I'm just going to hand you a blank document. Can you just sign your name?
Right. Well, that's expectation, right? And again, I'll give you an example, because this was probably the most intense deal I worked on from a family dynamic. Right? I got referred into a client, and I went to visit, and we were in a small little conference room. And it was the owner, it was his son, it was me. I'd never met him before. Quick conversation. Hey, so and so, nice attorney referred me in. I went in, I sat in the room, right, and we're sitting there, and the father looks at the son, looks at me, and he says, "I don't speak to him." First words out of his mouth. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about why. Right. I'm not a trained therapist, right? I'm not, but I've done a lot of deals, and I was a little shocked that this came up so quickly, like in the first words out of his mouth. So we literally were there for 2 hours, and I was kind of like mediating the whole conversation. I won't get into details, but there was a reason why he wasn't speaking to his son. Okay. Anyways, at the end, we said, okay, we're going to move forward. Everybody's good. All right, we'll go forward. And then just as I was about to get up, the son goes, "I got one more thing." I'm like, oh my God, we go again. I mean, literally another hour on right. And I have never met these people. And so we got through it. Everything's fine. And then we're literally ready to close. And the son decides to stick it one more time. I don't like my employment agreement. I don't like my stuff. He hires an attorney, and he drags it on for 3 months just to add pain which was not necessary. So I called him up. After all going back, I finally said to him, I said, "What do you want?" He goes, No. What do you want? I mean, forget about all this. I didn't want to hear it. Just, what do you want? He said, "So if they give you that, you'll sign." He goes, "Yes." So I called up the chairman of this $150 million business, actually probably more than that at the time. I said, "Alan, if you want to get this deal done, hop in your car, go meet so-and-so, have lunch, and tell him you're good with this." And he did. Dragged it on an extra 5 months, not to mention the costs associated with it. So anyways, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's a lot going on in families. There's a lot of family dynamics. And what's interesting is, like, you got to what needs to be gotten at much quicker. It's like, what is the underlying story that younger person had in their head? That needs to be looked at and dissected and honored, because it's a person's perspective. They are human. It doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's their perspective. And so getting that out early is part of what I do, because it will derail you like it did. You have to understand. And we think of it in business as like, what's it going to take to get this deal done, right? Like, give me the bottom line, as you were saying to them. Yes, and it's that thing, but oftentimes it's, this will sound a little soft, but hear me out. It's like, they need to be seen, they need to be heard, because it's what caused the rift to begin with. It isn't soft. It is a foundational fissure in that relationship, and it will come up. It will come up.
Yeah, it's simmering underneath the surface.
Always.
And, bringing those things up. And again, it's, it is, it's the whole dynamic of what you have to go through to sell, and keeping a level head so you don't, you don't blow one of the most important decisions of your life. And that's why, from our perspective, it's really important to engage with a firm like Osage, because if you're trying to do it on your own, you have never been through this. And now you're basically talking to a very sophisticated buyer who is going to feel they are in the driver's seat, the catbird seat, because they have done multiple deals. And now they have you who's has never been through it, and they can manipulate it or direct it to their advantage. And what's going to happen? You're going to get upset, and you're going to blow your cool, and you're going to tell them, see you later, mainly because of the unknowns, things you haven't dealt with. By having a proper advisor to guide you through all that, it's going to take that burden off of you so you can get what you need to do. As I said to our team, if it's a concern to our clients, a concern to us, no matter how small it is, it's going to nick at the back of their mind. You got to find a solution that works for them.
Absolutely. I always say, here you are investing in your business all this time, and you're investing in the process to sell the business. Invest in yourself to get clear about all the things we just talked about so that you are steady and you are sure and you are regulated and you are a clear communicator. Invest in that, to your point, with you, so that it can go more smoothly and you can expand your investment, right? It isn't just the price tag, but that will expand if you take the time to value your people. It will expand your relationships. The investment that you take, I can't even quantify the goodwill that's built when people have a chance to weigh in on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think someone like yourself, and I'll get to it in a minute, but if you have all these battles going on, so to speak, with family, that costs money because
It certainly does.
because it's costing a lot of legal fees going back and forth. We had employment agreement and non-solicitation agreement for one employee recently on a deal where it went back and forth like 15 times. They said yes, then no, yes and no, yes and no. I mean, someone has to review and redline and change it and everything else. So investing in someone like yourself and your expertise early on, prior to getting into the sales process, we always say, make sure you've talked to your CPA about the tax implications, talk to your wealth management company about is enough to sustain your life you want to live. Make sure you have a good estate tax attorney for you can set up your travel giving and things for your kids. And of course, you want to go to M&A attorney. I mean, add to that list, have a life coach, someone that you can talk to, as you get through this, it gets, to regulate the emotional aspect.
And I would add to that, have a coach or an advisor who knows business, right? The difference of someone who knows business and people is a very different experience. And so I would just add that, knowing business and people and systems makes a difference. It is a crucial investment. Things go much more smoothly, as we've been saying.
So before we wrap up, is there a couple of takeaways you want to share, with the audience that they should kind of think about? And
I would say primarily slow down, pause. It sounds so simple, but when we're under pressure, we want to go more quickly. We want to get to an answer that satisfies our brain. And oftentimes that can pull us in a direction that's just going to take us longer to finish or to close. So pause, make sure the right people are there. Be human about it. Yes, it's a business transaction, but it's so much more than that. It's your identity too. You've invested all of this time, energy, money, sacrifice. Be human in this process as well by slowing down. I think that's paramount.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, even for myself, sometimes before I react, take a deep breath, come down, react. I never, ever, ever react when clients call upset. It's my job to listen and then respond in a calm, open, honest way, to their concern and find a solution. Ellen, this has been great. How do people find you, by the way?
They can go to my website, ellenpalmerwellness.com, primarily.
Great. Well, look, this is a very important aspect of the sales process. As we said earlier, it's sometimes never overlooked, but it comes to the head on every deal. I appreciate you being with us today, and it's been great. And maybe we'll have you back at a future date.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you happen to miss the first part of this conversation with Ellen, you can click the link below to watch that as well. Thank you.